Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the live stream. I'm going to try and keep it short tonight. This is a second try. First try, we had some bandwidth issues. So, welcome. Glad that you found us. If you have student loans, you came to the right place. We are ground zero in the fight for student loan justice. We started the petition last March 2020. Federally owned student loans by executive order and also for the student loans. Million signatures now. Interestingly, there's a video out from economist Michael Hudson today about why Joe cancel student loans. I urge you all to watch it. It gives you a good, larger perspective. But an article a couple months ago when Biden first took office, answering the very same question. Now, our answer is quite different from Dr. Hudson. It's more granular. It's less big picture, more detailed. This is what you, and I urge you to watch that video. Wrong. But here is what you really need to know. And by the way, if you're pissed right now at Joe Biden, you should be. He is a lying, dog-faced pony soldier, I believe is the term. Before the election, Joe Biden was saying, if you earn $125,000 or less, I will eliminate your student loan debt. Well, that turns out to be a lie. I don't know what else you can call it. It's a lie. But we knew Biden wasn't serious. We knew Biden would be tough. In fact, I have to say that of all living people, former elected or current elected officials, I think Joe Biden probably deserves the most credit of anybody alive today. I think that's true. I could be slightly wrong. There may still be a few people that were in Congress in 1977 around, so I could be wrong, but I think I'm pretty close to the truth. You know, Joe Biden was one of 18 Democrats that broke ranks in 1977 to initially restrict bankruptcy protections from student loans. And then again, and by the way, the chairman of the committee that pushed that bill through, DeConcini out of Arizona, thanked Joe Biden when that legislation passed. So that's not good. But, you know, back again in 2005, Joe Biden, as ranking member on the Senate Judiciary Committee, he was a key player in getting bankruptcy protections removed from private student loans. So Joe Biden, you have to say, really created this lending scam. And so after the election, before the election, he said all that stuff. After the election, he was like, oh, no, I won't do that. Oh, I don't know if I have the power to do that. Oh, you know, I'll sign off on $10,000 in loan cancellation if Congress passes a bill, da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. Well, here is what's really going on, folks. This is important that you realize. Okay, there's two ways to cancel loans. One way is by the stuff that we heard Bernie and Elizabeth Sanders talk about during the last campaign. The first way is to pass a bill, pass a law through Congress that raises, say, $1.6 trillion. And it raises that money from rich people or bad people or whoever. It raises that money. Maybe it prints money. But it raises that money somehow, and then it uses that money to pay for student loan cancellation. That's one way of doing it. The other way to do it, and this is maybe unique to student loans, unlike almost every other loan in the country, 87% of all student loan debt is owned directly by the federal government. So the taxpayers paid for these loans already many years ago. And by the way, they didn't pay $1.6 trillion. They probably paid like a fifth of that or something. Most of that $1.6 trillion is interest and penalties and fees and other stuff. But, you know, the Higher Education Act gives the Secretary of Education full and broad authority to waive, compromise, release the federal interest in those loans. In other words, the Secretary and the President can cancel those loans without needing congressional approval. In other words, Congress does not have to pass a law for the president/secretary to cancel the loans. Not only that, because the federal government already owns these loans, no money needs to be paid. There is nothing to pay for. The taxpayer already paid for these loans many years ago. They should not have to pay not only a dollar 20 years ago for someone to go to college, but then have to pay again, say $3 or $4 because of interest and all that sort of nonsense. Today, again, to cancel those loans. It's ridiculous. The president can cancel all those loans, 100% of all federally owned student loans, by executive order without needing one dime from Treasury or the Federal Reserve for that matter, and without adding one penny to the national debt. So that is a very different way to cancel loans, I think you would agree, than by getting Congress to pass a law that raises money, that uses that money to pay for loan cancellation. That first way is nonsense. It's nonsense, guys. It will never happen. Congress will never pass a law that raises $1.6 trillion in taxes and then take that $1.6 trillion and pay off student loans. It just will never happen. Not ever, ever, ever in my life or yours. It is never going to happen. And even if Congress did pass a law, and they have passed laws calling it loan cancellation, like the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. We have a Department of Education in place that would love to take that tax money, take all those tax dollars, and then pretend to cancel loans, which is what they're doing with the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. But 99% of the people, if not maybe even more, will ultimately never get their loans forgiven. The Department of Education will find a way to bureaucratize whatever loan cancellation program Congress might put to them to death. That's what they did with public service. That's what they're doing with the IBR. And that's what they did to 99.99% of the millions of people who have tried to get through any number of income-driven repayment programs since the 90s. So canceling student loans by Congress is stupid. Canceling student loans by executive order, on the other hand, will actually happen and will actually work. And by the way, won't add a penny to the national debt and won't require raising any money in taxes. So just from a rational point of view, it is the obvious way to cancel student loans, particularly in a time of pandemic where we're throwing trillions of dollars out in the country, including trillions in the form of loans that do not need to be repaid, like PPP loans. Those all add to the national debt, don't need to be repaid, right? So we can do far better than that. In fact, canceling these federal student loans really is the first thing that the president should have done when this pandemic set in. But again, the question of why Biden won't do it is, I still haven't answered it yet. Here is the answer. Biden, nobody in Washington, D.C., including on both sides of the aisle, they cannot stand the thought of canceling loans without getting money back. So, in other words, nobody in Washington, D.C. gets paid when you cancel student loans by executive order. When you pretend to cancel student loans through Congress, everybody gets paid. The Department of Education loves that. They'll say they hate it. Oh, we shouldn't be doing this. It's a moral hazard, etc. But yes, by all means, yes. Give us $1.6 trillion and we will happily and gladly pretend to cancel student loans. So this is the swamp, guys. This is the swamp at work. And those aren't Donald Trump's words. Those are my words. I've been saying it, and other people have been saying the swamp since well before Donald Trump came around. In fact, I wrote an article in, I think, 2006 telling people to drain the swamp. That's what this is. Joe Biden was born and raised in the swamp. He is the swamp. He built the swamp. He's a shareholder in the swamp, particularly the student loan swamp. Now, I don't know how Biden might personally be profiting off the student loan program. It wouldn't surprise me a bit if he was. After that 2005 legislation that took bankruptcy protections away from private loans, Sallie Mae relocated their corporate headquarters to Delaware, so you know. And Joe Biden and the CEO of Sallie Mae, Chairman Albert Lord, they did a live press conference about this moving corporate headquarters to Delaware. and they were shoulder to shoulder, and they seemed like they were pretty chummy. You know, I have heard that Joe Biden plays golf on Albert Lord's private luxury 18-hole golf course in Anne Arundel, Maryland. Haven't been able to confirm that, but I suspect strongly that it is true. So how else has Biden profited? I don't know, but I'm sure we could probably find something if we looked really hard. So everybody in Washington, D.C. cannot stand the thought of canceling student loans by executive order because nobody gets paid. And when we started the petition back in March, and almost nobody was talking about loan cancellation by executive order, when it first started getting big a few months into it, when we hit like around 500,000 signatures and started getting reported on nationally in places like Newsweek and Fox News, all of a sudden, these swamp creatures came out of the woodwork, and not just from the right, by the way. We're talking about people not only from the American Enterprise Institute, like Jason Delisle, that fucking monster swamp creature, Jason Delisle, but also people from places like the Brookings Institution. You know, there are a lot of people in Washington, D.C. on both sides of the aisle that feed from this Department of Education's federal lending system. It's $1.6 trillion. That's a lot of money. And the Department of Education, if they're smart, and they are, they certainly know how to do deals and connections and secret Washington, D.C. to, to watch their backs. So we're seeing people from disparate places, from the Brookings Institution on the left to the American Enterprise Institute on the right, and all over Washington. Even the Cato Institute is coming out. They're like, oh, no, 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 no. Don't cancel loans by executive order. Like the Brookings guy was like, oh, yeah, if you want to cancel loans, yeah, do it through Congress. Do not do it by executive order. And the only reason is because they are fighting for the swamp, people. That's the only reason. The only possible argument that you can give for not canceling student loans by executive order, but rather canceling student loans through Congress, is because you want to get more money from the tax. I'm going to say that. So it's just disgusting. Dr. Hudson's video, I urge you to watch it. I'm not gonna say what he said. That we used to have Jubilee on this earth, like thousands of years ago, like before Christ even. There was Jubilee every 50 years. All debts, land that had been taken from people by creditors was returned. And that kind of went away. And then Jesus came around. Anyways, listen to Michael's talk. It's very interesting. It's a very different answer from the one that we're giving. The one we're giving is more sort of granular and more specific to student loans in particular, because they are a very unique lending beast in the universe of lending beasts. I'd say they're the biggest and the meanest, quite frankly, even worse than mafia loans. Where a mobster will look you in the eye and say, hey, if you don't pay me, I'm going to cut off your fucking arm, right? Whereas, there's no, that's that. But with federal student loans, not only are there no bankruptcy protections, which Michael Hudson points out very clearly, there are no statutes of limitations for federal student loans. I'm telling you guys, this lending system is done. It's finished. It's toast. It is it's an abomination to our country. It is. These loans have got to go away. They are, I'd say, the closest thing to evil that I can think of. They have no place in our country. And if you ever pay one more dime, certainly you ought to be ashamed of yourself. I'm not kidding you. Ashamed of yourself. Do not feed the beast. This lending system is going away, one way or the other. It is vanishing into a mist of illegitimacy as we speak. Even before the pandemic, 80% of all borrowers were never going to be able to repay their loans. That's probably closer to 85 or 90% today. But I'm telling you guys, this lending system is done. And the time for good people to rise up and throw this lending system off their backs has come. This pandemic is the nail in the coffin of this lending system. So whatever Biden is saying today, whatever he's putting or not putting in his budget, it really doesn't make any difference, guys. This lending system is done. It's toast. It's done for. It's over the cliff. It's over the moon. It's not coming back. Now, the one thing that will prolong this agony is when weak people, scared people, continue to pay into it. That will only feed this beast. Don't do that. It's not good for you. It's not good for this country. And it's not good for the tens or millions, hundreds of millions of people who are going to follow in our footsteps and do not deserve to be conquered and enslaved. You know, the founding fathers were very worried about something like this student loan catastrophe happening. That's why they called for uniform bankruptcy laws in the Constitution. They called for uniform bankruptcy laws ahead of the power to declare war, ahead of the power to raise an army and build a navy and even coin currency. That's how important the founding fathers felt that bankruptcy protections were to having a healthy, free country. So do not pay. It's time to take this lending system to the bath and drown it in the tub. For your good, for the good of the country, and for the good of tens or hundreds of millions of people to follow in our footsteps. They'll garnish my wages and they'll do this and they'll do that. No. You need to bulletproof yourself. It's not that hard to avoid garnishment. And believe me, guys, when, even before this pandemic, 35 million of the 45 million borrowers probably weren't paying. Somewhere around there. The majority of all borrowers were not paying. Okay? Almost nobody is paying right now, maybe 10% of the people. And whenever this repayment suspension is lifted, if you think that even 15% of the people are going to resume paying, I think you're wrong. So if you ever pay another dime on your federal student loans, I think you're a fool. And quite frankly, you ought to be ashamed of yourself. It's not only an unwise thing to do, it's unpatriotic at this point. This lending system has got to go, and the founding fathers are rooting for us. And you need to not worry about those people who wag their fingers at you saying, oh, you borrow money, you got to pay it back. No. This is not a bad borrower problem. This is a catastrophically failed lending system. And anybody that wants to wag their fingers at you, whether they know it or not, they are actually defending and perpetuating the worst big government, college feeding, lending scam in the history of this country, and they ought to be ashamed of themselves. People who paid their student loans in years or decades past, they should be glad to be done. And, I've seen a lot of comments lately from people who are like, yeah, I paid off my student loans. I paid a lot. But I would not wish this on my fellow citizens. I absolutely want these loans to be canceled because this is just disgusting, what we're doing to our people. And I think that's a growing consensus. I think even people without student loans who can't stand college students, if they take two steps back and they go, oh, wait a minute, by me opening my mouth and wagging my fingers at the people being crushed by this lending system, I'm actually defending the lending system and the colleges that profit from it. Most of the haters in this space tend to think of themselves as conservatives. Well, the very least conservative thing that you could possibly do is fight against canceling these loans and ending this lending system. I don't know if the colleges are indoctrinating our kids to socialism or communism. We don't even go there. That's not our thing. But what I do know is that conservatives believe that to be true. And so by them wagging their fingers at us, and I know it probably feels good for them to do that because maybe they didn't go to college, or maybe they just hate young people. They just hate college students. Whatever their mental deal is, they are wrong, and they ought to be ashamed of themselves. And you need to tell them that. You need to stand up and fight for yourself, because these slack-jaw yokels who have an anger about, who just hate college students or whatever their deal is, they are hurting this country badly. In fact, if this country ever does go socialist or communist or whatever they're afraid of, they will have themselves to thank because they were actually fighting for the worst big government college enriching lending monstrosity in the history of this country. They ought to be ashamed of themselves, and you ought to tell them that. When they take two steps back and they take another look, they'll go, oh my God, okay, I'm wrong. Now, I have conversations quite frequently with people come in hot And they come in and saying, why do you think the government should be paying for your college? And by the end of the conversation, they're like, oh, I owe you an apology. I did not understand what was actually going on. So just remember that, guys. We got this, but we have to make the argument. We have to fight. If you sit there and you wait and you watch and you worry and you listen to me and then you don't do anything, nothing's going to happen. This problem gets solved with your action, your agency. Don't forget that. Look up and down here on our Facebook group if you're watching us on Facebook. If you're on YouTube, go to our website and find us on Facebook. We have daily actions that we do every single day. We've got over 1 million people on our petition right now. We have a huge muscle to flex, but we need you helping us on a daily basis to flex it. You know, the actions that we're telling people to do, usually they take literally about 5 seconds. Usually it's like retweet this, which is very easy to do. Or maybe it's send an email to this guy, or something very simple. When over 1 million people are doing that every day, that's game over. That's we win. That's finally we get this lending system thrown off of our backs. So we need you. These are your loans. This is your problem. You can't sit there and do nothing. So anyways, I am hoping that the bandwidth was good for this video. I'm going to review it in a minute. We'll see. With that, I'll wish you a good night, good luck. And guys, we need you right now to spread the word about this petition, to tell everyone you know about this group, our petition, and to look up and down this list and take the very simple actions that we need you to take in order that we can be one big, massive, collective, unstoppable force. You know, we've got the muscle. We just have to flex it. So, okay, folks, I'll be back on Wednesday. Ed will be back tomorrow. Until next time, good luck. Godspeed. God bless everybody.